Greetings. My name is Wesley Rolnick, and I'm going to be presenting Amazon Web Services CloudTrail. And this is part of my cloud computing course, CSCIE 90 at Harvard Extension School. So what is the Amazon CloudTrail? Well, that's an interesting question. The Amazon CloudTrail, you see, provides a way to log API calls on Amazon Web Services account. This is used for auditing, troubleshooting, and general security. And it's very simple. All it does is record your various logs. So what are some of the benefits here? Well, CloudTrail provides a very quick and extremely easy way to grab these different API calls. Just a moment here. It is also very easy to set up. And when I say easy, I mean you can do it in a matter of about 30 seconds to a minute. It's just a couple clicks and it sets everything up for you. It sets up a brand new S3 bucket to store your logs in, and it'll even create an SNS notification option with the proper permissions that are needed to view it. This is actually really important because this is a big issue I ran into when I was setting this up programmatically, which I'll show when we get to the demo part of the walkthrough. Alright, and so the last bullet here I think is an important one. So even though there is an API and there's a way to programmatically set this up, it's quite a bit easier to do it through the GUI, and it's also extremely easy to do with just Amazon command line interface. The command line interface calls are very simple and very easy to use. Once you get into the actual API calls, I was using C#.net, it gets quite a bit more complicated. Alright, so some of the drawbacks here. Well, it's really easy to get this thing set up and start taking all API calls. It's really difficult to configure, especially configure well, and I'll show why this is in a little bit. Basically, Amazon collects hundreds of API calls, potentially thousands, depending on the scope of your corporation or scope of your user base using the cloud. So this can expand very rapidly. You need the permissions to be set up exactly right, and I'll show this in the demo. I ended up having to go in and just set my bucket so that everyone could access it for the purpose of the demo. I was having a lot of problems programmatically finding the exact permissions, and unfortunately the Amazon documentation on this is not quite 100%. Bummer, but it's okay because if you go in through the GUI again, it's pretty easy. Another big drawback here is you need to cap your S3 bucket. The CloudTrail is free. Sounds great, right? Well, like most things in life, nothing is truly free, and you still have to pay for the bandwidth and the storage of these logs. And you're going to be generating a lot of logs, and it's stored in JSON format. So every single API call is capturing a whole bunch of information in JSON format, which means this thing has the potential to blow up in your face very quickly if you don't cap it. There's some additional challenges, like how should notifications be handled? Do you really want an alert every time someone logs into the console? I mean, seriously, every single time somebody logs in, do you want your IT personnel to get a text message or get an email, hey, Joe Schmo just logged in? Or are you only interested in, say, an instance being terminated? Like, whoa, we have a policy between 9 and 10 o'clock at night. No, that's our regular termination period. And how come at 12 a.m. somebody went in and terminated an instance? What's going on? Let's capture that. Let's log that. You can set these things up, but again, it's a lot of work. And it takes some trial and error, frankly, to set it up properly. So why go through this hassle? Well, auditing. There's government organizations with lots of governance that will love this feature, and I mean absolutely love it. So, take for instance HIPAA. I know Siemens is a company that uses Amazon CloudTrail to manage and make sure that they are HIPAA compliant. HIPAA is a medical law here in the United States that basically it's supposed to protect patient privacy, but it puts a lot of burden on people writing medical software in hospitals and different clinics to be able to produce logs saying, hey, this nurse accessed this file at this time. This is very big in government because, take for example, there was a famous case a while back when Britney Spears was hospitalized. A whole bunch of nurses were fired because they went and looked at her medical records, looked at her file. Well, that's great. They got caught on camera or something looking at an actual file. But if you're writing software and you want some way of preventing people or knowing if who's accessed a medical log, well, you need to be able to provide that. And the base Amazon service doesn't really provide that. You'd have to write that into your code somehow, and that would get very complicated, especially if an administrator were to go in on the back end and look at the data. Not so with Amazon Web Services CloudTrail. Everyone, everything is logged. So, security. Let's say you know your corporation has a specific range of IP addresses. Well, you could set up your SNS notifications programmatically to only notify you if somebody tries logging in with a range outside of the IP address. Maybe even though you've got this set up on the cloud, people are only supposed to be logging in from a secured location or from their home network computer or from an IP address that is known to your corporation. Well, this is a great feature because you can easily set up notifications so that whoever your IT managers are or cybersecurity analysts are, they can be on the spot and looking at what the heck is going on and figure out if they're under attack or if somebody's even just probing their system before it becomes an issue. And the last big thing here is troubleshooting. That's right, if a specific call appears to be failing, for example, developer is not creating the right type of instance, you can set up a CloudTrail and figure out what API calls are actually being sent. This is really cool because I know I had this when I was going through the course where sometimes I was like, what the heck? I know I'm sending some sort of API call, but I wasn't getting the result I thought I should be. Well, if you set up a CloudTrail, boom, you know what your call is and you can see what it is. It's really nice. So here's an example output of some events that were generated here that I generated specifically for this, and it was generated through my demo program. So you can see like, hey, I wanted to stop logging this trail. I terminated some instances. I actually ran a whole bunch of instances in a short period of time there. Created a new bucket. I changed a bucket policy. And you can see who changed it when you expand this. So when you stop logging, everything gets stored in the S3 bucket specified, and it's dated, and it's also set up by region, and it's stored in this .gz format. Well, to open this, it's a weird format. It's actually JSON. So if you go back to here, and you actually expand one of these guys here, you don't actually need a JSON viewer to view this. This is inside of the console, very natural. However, if you wanted to go into your S3 bucket and pull something up, this is what you'd see. Very nice, lot of detail in there. And this is for a single API call, which I've highlighted here called event name. There was a call said from the GUI, which generated this list right here. And the call was describe trails. Simple call. has my IP address, which I blotted out there, has the account ID, the access key ID, and a whole bunch of other information. So you can actually see who digitally signed different calls for more secure things. That's what this warning was that I kept blowing over, which is keys and IP addresses are exposed when you do this. So you want to make sure that you're okay with that. Yeah. Let's get into some code here. Fun part. So I'm just going to very simply walk through the demo I created. First thing I did was create an instance. Really simple instance. Spins up, small instance, and I just wanted to create an API call so that I'd have something I could go terminate and I could see that it was being run, all that jazz. Next thing, I create an S3 bucket. This is a really nice feature. It's this does bucket exist because, as I'm sure you remember from our course, if a bucket already exists, you're not actually able to create it. That meaning, if the bucket is already there, the name exists, you can't recreate it. Alright, moving right along. This little block creates our bucket programmatically. Nice nifty little feature. Sees if the bucket already exists. Next part. This is really fun. We create an SQSQ and an SNS notification, and we subscribe to that SQSQ. I did this because I didn't want my phone flooded with every single API call. You know, the queue, as we saw, can really expand, contract. It's a nice way if you're putting a lot of information out. And the final part, the dirt simple part, we do a simple create a request and then a response, which actually generates the request. Important to note, you need to have a name for your CloudTrail, and you're only allowed to have one CloudTrail per region. You can see your CloudTrails via the CLI here just by doing AWS CloudTrail describe trails. If you create it through the GUI, you'll have a default CloudTrail name, and when you delete it, if you're trying to create a new one, you won't get any response back, and when you do describe trails, you'll have this here. So again, some final thoughts here. It's really easy to programmatically go in and create this. I mean, I wasn't following any tutorials, any examples, and it didn't take me very long to get this code up and running. However, doing anything useful with these API calls, well, that's a pretty big challenge because it's all in the JSON format and it's a little bit hidden. You have to either go in, open up a bucket, pull data from a bucket, and have some sort of way of formatting the JSON and pushing it out. So while this thing is very powerful, I feel that looking forward to seeing what Amazon does with it in the coming months and years, because I mean, this obviously has a lot of potential, but right now it's extremely low level and a little difficult to use. I hope you enjoyed watching. Thanks.